I applaud your advice for some temperance. You doubt the ability to hold on to this $70 euphoria. Why?
The fundamentals haven't changed all that much from where we were on the supply side. So we've had OPEC make significant cuts in production in 2020 on the back of the COVID collapse in demand. And the strategy at that time was that they would look to gradually increase production from the start of 2021. That was pushed out, obviously, because we had another round of global restrictions on activity because of a surge in case numbers. But really, to see the exceptionally deep cuts sustain for another month, so that's the extra 1 million barrels a day from Saudi Arabia through to at least the end of April, and then perhaps even more gradual adjustment, means that there's a huge amount of pent-up supply, which eventually will need to come back onto the market. In addition, you've got a relatively high oil price, which makes it a lot more attractive for non-OPEC producers to continue to invest and to look to scale up production in the second half of this year and into 2022 as well. And then finally, as oil prices are, above $70 or in that sort of range, the incentive for compliance with the targets, slips. So you potentially get reduced compliance from within OPEC as well on production levels. So I think really on the supply side, at least, the risk is very much for increased supply going forward, which we think will cap gains on prices.
And that compliance has been almost the mantra from His Royal Highness in Saudi Arabia, certainly since this time last year, and that's when it all imploded. Khatija, you talk about the fiscal position. You make it very clear about balanced budgets. We put some of the fiscal break-evens, which I know are slightly different to what you're talking about, into the GTV library, and they are there for Bahrain, for the UAE. So let's just dig into this. Are you concerned about discipline, fiscal discipline, as we live in this 60-70 zone, let's call it that?
I think at this stage, given what happened last year to budgets and the massive increase in deficits, the requirement to, in some countries, cut spending just as we were going into the depth of the pandemic, hopefully has brought home to governments in the region the importance of continuing with fiscal reforms to reduce that reliance on volatile oil prices. So our view is that, at least for 2021, governments in the region will continue to prioritize deficit reduction over increasing spending, because, again, it's not clear how long these high oil prices will be sustained. So if you are looking to boost spending on the back of the $70 oil price in 2021, and prices then moderate next year or the year after, it's much more difficult to take that increased spending back. So we think governments will be a little more cautious on simply blowing out their budgets again on high oil prices. However, the countries which have found it quite difficult to implement fiscal reforms, I think, may find it the additional space that's given to them by oil at $70 a barrel may make it easier for them to delay certain reforms, perhaps delay tax increases, and wait for their economies to have recovered from the coronavirus impact before they again look to tackle their structural deficits.
You say that we here in the UAE have a balanced budget figure of around $66. You were working off an assumed spend. Do you think at $66 and this kind of price action that we see, you see a little bit more latitude for more fiscal largesse? We've seen one or two moves by the administration here in terms of levies, extensions, and various efforts. Do you see a little bit more fiscal latitude for us in the UAE?
Yes, I think out of all the countries in the region, the UAE probably has the most space to be able to increase spending. And certainly the announcements that we've seen over the weekend in terms of, Dubai's new 20-year urban development strategy, again, suggests that they do plan to continue to invest in infrastructure. And certainly higher oil prices provide a bit more scope for the country as a whole, not necessarily for Dubai, to continue with that investment. But again, the government has been quite conservative in its fiscal approach in recent years, and so it remains to be seen whether they will feel comfortable aggressively increasing spending when they may not be confident that oil prices remain where they are for an extended period of time.